The moment that shattered my marriage wasn't dramatic. No screaming match, no slammed doors. It was a single notification on my husband's phone, left carelessly on the nightstand while he showered. 17 years of marriage, and all it took to unravel everything was one dinner reservation at Lumiere, Denver's most exclusive restaurant, where we dreamed of celebrating our 10th anniversary before he canceled for a work trip. The reservation wasn't for us. It was for him and someone named Sophie. I'd never been the type to snoop. Trust was sacred to me, something I guarded fiercely. But that night, intuition, that quiet nagging voice I'd been ignoring for months, pulled me toward his phone like a magnet. The screen lit up with a message so simple it felt like a knife to the chest. Table for 2 confirmed at Lumiere, Friday at 7:30 p.m. window seat as requested. She'll love it. My hands moved before my mind could stop them. The passcode was still our wedding date, 4 digits, as if loyalty were that easy to crack. What I found inside was a world I didn't recognize. Messages, photos, inside jokes, even notes about a weekend trip to Santa Fe. Sophie curled in his arms, his smile brighter than any I'd seen in years. They talked daily, hourly, about everything from her morning coffee to the dress she wore to bed. A year's worth of intimacy, hidden in plain sight. The air left my lungs. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall, to demand answers. But instead, I placed it back exactly where I found it, my fingers trembling. "Have you seen my blue tie?" Lucas called from the bathroom, his voice casual, as if our life hadn't just imploded. "Second drawer," I replied, my tone flat. That night, I lay beside him, my back turned, listening to his steady breathing while my mind raced. How many times had I dismissed his distance as stress? How often had I ignored the late nights, the unfamiliar scent on his shirts, the way his eyes darted away when I asked about his day? The signs had been there, I just hadn't wanted to see them. By morning, I had a plan. I kissed him goodbye like always. "Good luck with the Japanese clients," I said, forcing a smile. He nodded, oblivious, already scrolling through emails, probably hers. The moment the door closed, I called HR at the university and requested 3 days off. Not to cry. Not to rage. To act. I sat at the kitchen table, staring into a cold cup of coffee, my mind eerily calm. The woman who'd spent years smoothing over conflicts, making excuses, and swallowing her doubts was gone. In her place was someone sharper, clearer. If Lucas wanted a romantic dinner with Sophie, he'd get one, just not the way he imagined. I combed through his emails, his calendar meticulously detailed as if he never expected me to look. Friday, 7:30 p.m., Lumiere. Window seat. Wine pre-ordered. A perfect evening for 2 people with everything to hide. Then I found Sophie's full name through his firm's directory. Sophie Walker, Communications Department. A quick search led me to her social media, and 1 click later, I was staring at Ethan Walker, her husband, an architect with warm eyes and a kind smile. I didn't know him, but I knew the betrayal etched on his face in photos where he thought no one was looking. I couldn't just call him. I needed something subtler. As a lecturer, I had one advantage: inviting guest speakers. So I crafted an email, professional, polished, impossible to ignore. "Dear Mr. Walker, my name is Clara Whitmore. I teach project management at Metro Denver University, and we're hosting a speaker series on sustainable urban design. Your work on the Rivergate Business District caught our attention. I'd love to discuss the possibility of having you as a guest speaker. I've reserved a table at Lumiere this Friday at 7:30 p.m. to go over details. Hope you can join us." 2 hours later, his reply landed in my inbox. "Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. Friday works perfectly. Looking forward to it." The trap was set. I called Lumiere and booked a table near theirs, close enough to see everything, close enough for the truth to be undeniable. When the hostess asked if I had any special requests, I smiled. Just a good view. Friday night arrived. I wore a teal silk dress Lucas once called too loud for dinner, my hair swept up, heels sharp enough to match the quiet fury in my chest. I arrived early, ordered a martini, and waited. At 7:25 p.m., Ethan walked in, tall, composed, utterly unaware of what was coming. We exchanged pleasantries, talking about architecture, the city, anything to fill the time until the main event arrived. Then I saw them. Lucas, in the gray blazer I'd bought him last birthday, guiding Sophie to their table. She wore red, her laugh too bright, her fingers brushing his wrist as he poured wine. They looked like a couple in love, oblivious, untouchable. Until Lucas saw me. His glass slipped. The waiter caught it just in time, but the damage was done. Sophie followed his gaze, her smile freezing as recognition flashed across her face. I excused myself to the restroom, timing it perfectly. On my way back, Sophie intercepted me, her voice a shaky whisper. "You're Clara, right?" I smiled. "And you're the woman holding hands with my husband while yours sits 10 feet away." Her face paled. "Please, not here." "Why not?" I tilted my head. "This is the perfect place. Candlelight, wine, soft music, everything set for a performance. Don't you think Ethan deserves to know who he's really married to?" Before she could respond, I turned and called, "Ethan? Could you come here for a second?" The moment he saw them, Sophie trembling, Lucas's face white with panic, the pieces fell into place. I didn't need to say another word. "Ethan," I said quietly, "this is my husband, Lucas. And I believe you recognize Sophie, your wife." The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Then I walked away, leaving them in the wreckage of their own lies. But before I left, I turned back one last time. "Oh, and don't worry about the bill. Lucas's company card seems quite familiar here." Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. I didn't look back. The private room at Lumiere was too elegant for what was about to happen. Soft candlelight flickered against the walls, casting delicate shadows over the table set for 4. Lucas sat frozen, his fingers gripping the edge of his chair like it was the last solid thing in a crumbling world. Sophie wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, her carefully applied makeup now smudged with tears. Ethan stood motionless beside me, his breathing shallow, as if the air itself had turned to glass. I took my seat first, smoothing my dress with deliberate calm. The waiter hovered uncertainly near the door until I nodded at him to leave. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream could have been. Lucas broke first. "Clara, I can explain." "No," I said, pouring myself a glass of water with steady hands. "You can't. But you can tell the truth. Start with when it began." His mouth opened, then closed. Sophie made a small, wounded sound beside him. Ethan finally moved, pulling out his chair with a scrape that echoed in the quiet room. He sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving Sophie's face. "Was it the Denver conference?" he asked quietly. "When you said you were staying with your sister?" Sophie flinched. That was answer enough. I watched Lucas carefully, the way his throat worked as he swallowed, the nervous tick in his left eye that used to appear during tough negotiations. "It started as just talking," he said finally. "She understood the pressure at work. It wasn't supposed to." "Don't." Ethan's voice was low but razor-sharp. "Don't insult us by pretending this was some emotional affair. I saw the photos. The Santa Fe trip. The hotel receipts in your laundry." He turned to Sophie, his voice cracking just once. "You told me that was a girls' weekend." The dam broke then. Sophie dissolved into sobs, her carefully constructed facade crumbling like sand. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I never meant." "You never mean anything, do you?" Ethan's hands clenched on the table. "Not the late nights, not the sudden work trips, not the way you've been pulling away for months." He looked at Lucas with something like clinical curiosity. "Did you know she still sleeps with the stuffed bear I gave her on our anniversary? Or was that just part of the act too?" Lucas had no answer. The confident lawyer who could charm juries sat mute, his carefully rehearsed excuses dying in his throat. I studied him dispassionately, this man I'd shared a bed with for 17 years, and realized with sudden clarity that I no longer recognized him. The man I married would have owned his mistakes. This stranger just looked scared. I set my water glass down with deliberate precision. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm in a way that seemed to unnerve them more than shouting would have. "Lucas, you'll move your things out by Monday. The divorce papers will be ready by the end of next week. Sophie," I turned to her, watching her flinch, "I suggest you start looking for a new job. The legal community in Denver is smaller than you think." Ethan exhaled sharply beside me. "We're leaving," he said to Sophie, standing abruptly. "No." She stood on unsteady legs, reaching for his arm. He recoiled as if burned. "Don't," he said, the single word carrying more finality than any argument could have. They left without another word, the door clicking shut behind them with terrible finality. Alone with Lucas at last, I allowed myself one deep breath before meeting his eyes. "You'll sign the papers without argument," I said. "Or everyone from your managing partners to your golf buddies will know exactly why our marriage ended." His face twisted. "You'd really destroy my career?" "I didn't destroy anything," I said softly. "You did that all by yourself." Standing, I gathered my purse, taking one last look at the man I'd loved for half my life. "The house keys go in the mailbox by Sunday night. Don't call me." The walk through the restaurant felt surreal. Every clink of silverware, every burst of laughter seemed magnified, a stark contrast to the devastation I left behind. Outside, the cool night air hit my face like a slap. I breathed it in deeply, my hands steady, my eyes dry. I didn't go home that night. I checked into the Celeste Hotel, where the front desk clerk handed me a key card with polite disinterest. Room 1203 overlooked the city skyline, its lights twinkling indifferently at human drama. Only when the door locked behind me did the shaking start. Not from sadness, from adrenaline, from the sheer enormity of what I'd just done. The tears came then, hot and furious, for all the years wasted, for all the signs I'd ignored, for the woman I'd been who thought love meant constant forgiveness. I cried until my throat ached, until the first light of dawn painted the skyline pink. A knock startled me at sunrise. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan, his face drawn but determined. When I opened the door, he didn't speak, just held out a coffee, black, 1 sugar, exactly how I took it. We sat by the window in silence, watching the city wake up. "I filed a restraining order against Sophie last night," he said finally. "She showed up drunk at my place, screaming about how I'd ruined everything." He rubbed his eyes. "Funny how that works." I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. "What now?" "Now," he said, meeting my gaze squarely, "we rebuild. Not together necessarily, but not alone either." He hesitated. "If you want." I studied him, the quiet strength in his posture, the honesty in his tired eyes. Here was someone who understood the exact weight of betrayal, who wouldn't expect me to pretend it didn't hurt. "Coffee sometimes would be nice," I said at last. He smiled faintly. "Coffee sometimes it is." The months that followed were both harder and easier than I expected. Lucas fought the divorce at first, alternating between pleading voicemails and angry threats about taking everything. But the evidence was undeniable, and his firm, wary of scandal, pressured him to settle quietly. The house sold quickly. The division of assets was clinical. The life we'd built together dismantled with shocking efficiency. Ethan and I kept our promise of occasional coffee, which slowly became weekly dinners, then weekend hikes. We never spoke about our exes beyond the practicalities, just two people relearning how to trust, how to exist without walking on eggshells. It was peaceful. A year later, at Professor Benson's retirement gala, I saw Lucas across the crowded ballroom. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a sort of wary tension. When we spoke, his apology sounded rehearsed but sincere. I accepted it not for him, but for me, to finally close that chapter without bitterness. As Ethan and I left the gala that night, hand in hand beneath the stars, I realized something unexpected. The woman who walked into Lumiere that fateful Friday night had been brave, yes, but she'd also been broken. The woman walking out now, she was whole. Not because of any man, but because she'd finally learned to choose herself first. And that, more than any revenge, more than any dramatic confrontation, was the real victory.